Welcome back. If you're here, you want to get smart, fast on the big issues. Today, we're diving into something maybe a bit under the radar, but really critical for our energy future.
That's right.
We're looking at a potential uranium shortage, possibly by 2080.
Yeah, it sounds distant, 2080, but the wheels are already in motion, you know? The factors driving this are happening right now.
And our source material for this deep dive.
We're drawing heavily on the latest Red Book report, that's the common name for it. Officially, it's the Uranium Resources Production and Demand 2024 report from the Nuclear Energy Agency, the NEA, and the IAEA.
Okay, the Red Book. So what's the headline? What's the core issue they're flagging?
Well, it paints a picture of a potential mismatch down the line. On one hand, you've got global demand for nuclear power really starting to climb.
Right, driven by the energy transition, moving away from fossil fuel.
Exactly. That's a huge piece. But there's another, maybe less expected driver, the massive, and I mean massive, energy thirst of artificial intelligence.
AI. Interesting. Okay, so that's the demand side. What's the other side of the equation?
The supply side. Specifically, the supply from known economically recoverable uranium reserves using current tech. The report suggests that without significant new investment in finding and developing new sources, those known reserves might start to look thin against that rising demand later this century.
So hang on, just to clarify, the report isn't saying we're running out of the element uranium itself globally.
No, definitely not. That's a key distinction. There's theoretically a lot of uranium in the Earth's crust. The issue is finding it, confirming it's viable to mine economically, and then actually getting it out and processed into fuel.
Yeah.
That whole process, the nuclear fuel cycle, it takes time. Years, often many years, from discovery to fuel rod.
Got it. So it's more about the pipeline of usable supply keeping up with demand.
Precisely. The report basically says, look, long-term resources seem okay if we develop them, but relying only on what's currently known and operational. That might lead to a shortfall if demand spikes as projected and we don't invest soon.
You mentioned AI earlier as a surprise factor. Can you unpack that a bit more? How does AI connect to uranium demand?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Think about the huge data centers needed to train and run these complex AI models. Companies like Google, Amazon, Meta, their AI ambitions need incredible amounts of electricity.
Right. Constant power.
Exactly. And nuclear offers a potential source of stable, low-carbon baseload power. So these tech giants are increasingly looking at nuclear, either through direct investment or power purchase agreements, to fuel their growth.
So it's moved beyond just governments and utilities pushing for nuclear. The tech sector is now a major demand driver.
It seems to be becoming one, yes. It adds a whole new dimension to future energy planning and, consequently, uranium demand forecasts.
And we're seeing this reflected geographically.
We are. The report highlights East Asia, for example. Projections there suggest nuclear capacity could increase by, well, up to 220% compared to 2022 levels. That's a huge jump.
Wow, 220%. That signals a pretty strong regional commitment.
It certainly does, and it's part of a wider trend.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is this just an East Asia thing or is it broader?
No, it's broader. You've got over 20 countries, including the US, the UK, South Korea, among others, who've publicly committed to a goal of tripling global nuclear capacity by 2050.
Tripling by mid-century. That's ambitious.
Very. It's tied directly to climate goals and decarbonization efforts, and you see it in the money flow, too. The IEA noted that annual investment in nuclear jumped almost 50% between 2020 and 2023 alone.
Okay, so the momentum is definitely there. Now, the report also mentioned specific countries, didn't it? Iran came up.
Yes, it did. The Red Book projects Iran could significantly increase its uranium production, potentially almost quadrupling it to around 71 tons in 2024.
Okay, and the context there.
Well, Iran maintains its nuclear program is for peaceful civilian energy purposes. However, outside analyses, like from the U.S. Institute for Science and International Security, suggest that Iran's enrichment activities and potential reserves raise questions. They assess that these resources could potentially support a military program while maybe being insufficient for a large, sustained civilian reactor fleet. It just adds a layer of geopolitical complexity to the global uranium picture.
Right, it's never just about the geology or the economics, is it?
Rarely. Geopolitics is always intertwined with energy resources.
So let's try and pull these threads together. We've got rising demand from the clean energy push, this big new factor of AI's energy needs, ambitious expansion plans like in East Asia, a global political commitment to triple capacity, investment flowing in, and these specific country dynamics like with Iran. What's the bottom line from the Red Book regarding that 2080 potential shortage?
The fundamental message is one of conditional supply, perhaps. The uranium is likely there in the ground, globally speaking, but turning that theoretical resource into actual nuclear fuel when it's needed requires massive, timely investment.
Investment across the board. Exploration, mining.
Yes, the whole chain. Exploration to find new deposits, development to turn deposits into working mines, and building or expanding the facilities to process the ore into fuel. And because of the long lead times involved,
Right, you mentioned that earlier.
decisions, or the lack thereof, made in the next few years will directly impact fuel availability decades from now. So if that investment doesn't happen at the scale needed, then yes, the world's growing appetite for nuclear power could bump up against supply constraints by 2080, even though the raw element isn't fundamentally scarce.
So for everyone listening, it boils down to this. The push for clean energy and the sheer power demands of AI are converging, driving a potential surge in nuclear power demand. But getting the uranium fuel for those reactors isn't automatic. It takes years and huge investment.
That's the crux of it.
Which leaves us with a pretty critical question, doesn't it? Given those long lead times for uranium supply, what happens geopolitically, economically, if the necessary investments don't keep pace with this accelerating demand? Something definitely worth keeping an eye on.